say right now, I wouldn't necessarily want to have any of those students as a doctor. At least for me, I wouldn't necessarily want that. It's not to say they may not all go on to be individual doctors, and that may not be just to say, maybe I just took this because I had to take this oath. But none of that was actually about treating a patient. So at times, the acronym STEM, traditionally meaning science, technology, engineering, and math, has now two M's too. And I think it is quite justified. Being now the second M, and this being medicine. And medicine itself is a science that has to do with the curing of disease and the treatment of injury, whether, accidental or the result of malicious act, those kinds of things. And medicine has, for a long time, rightfully, I think, had a place of prominence because of put it frankly, it's a very noble enterprise. And for most part, knowing several doctors myself, for the most part, they just want to practice medicine. They just want to help their patients, and a number of different things. And it is for this reason that I think bringing up this article related to the science that is medicine is something of importance. This is an opinion piece written by Dr. Stanley Goldfarb, who is the founder of an organization called Do No Harm. Now, if you've seen Do No Harm on Twitter, they're basically doctors who've had a bloody hell enough, and good on them, with the postmodernist worldviews that have pervaded many things at this point. And so I want to bring this up, but I also want to remind folks of a couple of other things, because, of course, what's about to be said here could be anecdotal, but it's not. And I want to tie this back to it's been a running theme lately of the notion that there has been something of a pretty precipitous drop in the trust and confidence in medical professionals, scientists, by the broader public. Most recent one I did was on higher education itself. I did that last week. But let's get into this with that. And this may be a little bit longer of a video than I would normally do, just to make a few points. Because I've also got some YouTube clips I want to play and put in here to, again, make the point. A few months ago, I was summarily fired as an editor-in-chief of the kidney section of the most widely used medical reference. Up to Date is used by tens of thousands of physicians every day, helping them to make the best and most timely decisions for patient care. Even as I was fired, Up to Date's leadership team praised my work. So why did they fire me? Over the previous 4 years, I had publicly questioned the rise of diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI, in healthcare, expressing particular concern about its ubiquity in medical schools. That included the institution where I taught and served as an administrator for decades, the University of Pennsylvania's Perelman School of Medicine. I thought I was engaging in respectful discussion about the purpose of medical education and the role of medical professionals. Turns out I was questioning religious dogma, the adherents of which brook no debate, much less dissent. Now, here's the thing. There was a comment I heard earlier today, and it was actually Kieran over on a different friend of the channel, Kieran White, over on a different show. He made a point of saying that when he was at university, a lot of times he was dismissed not out of anger, but out of fear that people were afraid. And so when it comes to questioning things, and I think it's fair to say that all of us might have this to some degree, that we're perhaps a little afraid of being challenged. But it is the job of scientists to be critics. And I was listening. Oh God, who said it? I think it was Jay Bhattacharya. I listened to an interview, and I don't entirely agree with this comment, but he said something I found very interesting in that he said consensus is the sign of dead science. To which I don't entirely agree because there's differences in what do you mean by consensus? Is it a natural consensus? You mean that following that chain of evidence, you tend to gravitate toward a particular thing until that thing is then challenged and overruled, um, again by other evidence and debate and what have you, or is it an artificial and forced consensus, which is then very much dead science? Then I would very much agree. So that's where I would draw the line of difference there. But that's the point in here, is that it's perhaps fear in a way to debate, and I can understand that, to debate and to discuss. But if you're after pursuing the truth, which foundationally anything with respect to science is about pursuing the truth. Science is about the pursuit of the truth, yeah. With medicine, it happens to be about anything related to disease and injury, curing disease and injury, understanding disease and injury, all that kind of stuff. So let us continue. For me, it all began in 2017. The Perelman School had just hired a vice dean for education who urged that we train medical students to be leaders in social justice. That set off alarm bells, since medical students are supposed to treat illnesses, not diagnose, much less cure, what ails society. Physicians simply have no agency to address these societal ills. Now, I want to make a point here, reading that again, because I did read this earlier, but I wanted to read it a second time. I'll read this with you all anyway. This is more true not just of physicians, but of scientists in general, because a lot of scientists are really myopic in their focus. They're focused on some very specific things. Yes, they have, of course, general knowledge and understanding. Otherwise, they wouldn't get there, so you would hope. But they're very myopic in their research focuses. Never, ever, ever were they meant to do, physicians are about treating illnesses, treating injury. They're not supposed to diagnose and address societal ills. Neither are individual scientists. And the reason I partially mention this is that, well, how many times are we going to basically start pushing particular perspectives from that pedestal where we have been so well trusted as physicians and scientists, and then find ourselves wondering why there's been a lack of trust in medical professionals, scientists, and what have you, or a decrease of trust and confidence in those things. That's been like sort of vein of thought that's been on my mind lately. My alarm turned to shock when the vice dean declared there's way too much science in the curriculum. Oh my gosh, that would be a facepalm moment for me. A sentiment that was echoed when another colleague criticized me for not emphasizing climate change in the course of... Okay. First off, yes, there are relationships between climate and health. Nothing wrong with pointing that out if it's relevant to the course. One thing there. That's not the purpose of being in medical school. Even I know that. I happen to be on the other side of that equation as a climate person. Oh, boy. Clearly, these efforts were aimed at turning physicians into advocates for social and political issues. Medical education is built on a foundation of science, the key to eradicating disease and improving human wellness. Replacing that foundation is harmful to America's health. My concerns deepened at the school as the school began launching new programs under the aegis of DEI to increase the diversity of medical school classes. Later, it even began waiving MCAT requirements for some students who had attended HBCUs. For those of you who don't know what MCAT is like the SAT, but it is for medical school. While I firmly believe that people of all backgrounds can become great physicians, I also believe that high standards are essential to identifying the most promising students. Medical schools should be strengthening those standards for everyone, not weakening them for any one group. I also noticed a decline in standards as medical schools' clinical departments began hiring vice chairs for diversity and inclusion. So, basically, from here, what happened in his case was he got annoyed about it. He wrote an op-ed called "Take 2 Aspirin and Call Me by My Pronouns," in which he lamented that future physicians are increasingly being trained to be activists instead of, well, physicians. And this is where I go back to part of the conversation I had with Anna on Side Chat Saturdays, Anna Krylov. If we are not teaching our future physicians and scientists why being activists in their positions is probably a bad idea, or at least giving them that perspective to think about, then, I mean, partly it's our own fault, but the other part of it is that, you know, this is no surprise when this comes up, one that's not defended here and not made a very strong, sterling defense against this kind of stuff happening. And frankly, just to make a point here again, continuing the theme, is that if you're training physicians to be activists instead of to be physicians, and scientists to be activists instead of scientists, you should not be surprised when a significant portion of the population stops having trust and confidence in those disciplines the more you train them, which is not necessarily a good thing. And I do worry for the future of research in medicine, in STEM, in many of the scientific fields, when it's basically going in that direction, when you're teaching people to be activists. I want scientists who know how to go after the truth in their own discipline, not ones that are going to tell me or tell somebody else what their preferred narrative is, their activist narrative is, and have their activist narrative be considered the truth. Oh boy. Go down here a little bit. It quickly became apparent that my beloved medical profession, to which I had devoted more than 50 years, was spiraling downward even faster than I had realized. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the decline, as did the death of George Floyd in 2020. Suddenly, medical schools were loudly proclaiming that healthcare is systemically racist and that medical reparations are urgently needed, and that medical education and practice must fundamentally change. Whereas DEI and social justice were frequently discussed in 2018, by the end of 2020 they were central facets of medical education where they remain to this day. Amid it all, I spoke with countless physicians and medical educators who told me they were terrified to speak up. So I tried to say what they could not, protected by my retirement. I wrote a book using the same title as my infamous Wall Street Journal op-ed, and in 2022 I founded Do No Harm to draw public attention to the corruption of medicine. Do No Harm points out that medicine is rushing down a dangerous road. Medical schools that are further undermining standards in the name of diversity, leading to lower quality students who will provide worse care as physicians. Medical schools are publishing shoddy research articles that eschew rigorous science and see racism around every corner and as the basis of healthcare disparities for various minority groups. Don't forget the disparity fallacy. Medical practice is moving to provide preferential access to care by race, a blatant form of discrimination. And medical policymakers have bought into the dangerous lie that patients should see physicians who have the same skin color. That's called segregation, and it has no place in healthcare or anywhere else. So, I've pointed out these dangers and many others in countless op-eds, articles, and media interviews over the past 18 months. The blowback has been predictable. That's what led up to my firing by Up to Date. Its leaders could no longer tolerate being associated with someone who, despite upholding the highest standards of professionalism and science, dared to question the ideological takeover of healthcare. So, he goes on to say a few things here, and it's certainly interesting. So, he points out this particular aspect here. At the end of the day, DEI requires racial and gender discrimination. That's illegal. We've filed civil rights complaints with over 100 medical schools for their discriminatory actions. The federal government has opened dozens of investigations, and now medical schools are abandoning DEI-driven discriminatory practices as a result of these efforts. We have also supported legislative efforts to combat DEI policies in public medical schools. We're working with lawmakers in more than a dozen states to eliminate DEI policies from medical schools and to uphold the highest standards in admissions and curricula. One state has already passed such a law, and we expect many more victories in the months and years ahead. There are so many opportunities to protect medical education and practice through sound public policy. Can we cure the DEI infection in American medicine? We have to try. The future of healthcare hangs in the balance. So does the health of every American. Yes. Consider this is important, that I really don't give a damn what my doctor looks like so long as they're really damn good at what they do when I have a really bad illness. That's really what it amounts to, and that's really the way it should be thought of. Now, I want to remind folks about the key oath that every doctor takes when they graduate medical school, better known as the Hippocratic Oath. It's very old, going back to ancient Greece with this one. It's an ethical code that is attributed to Hippocrates as a guide in conduct by the medical profession throughout the ages, still used in the graduation ceremonies of medical school, and admittedly altered somewhat just because the original oath referred to Apollo, ancient Greek god of the sun. But anyway, also the god of medicine, if I remember correctly, in Greek mythology, but please correct me if I'm wrong. The oath dictates the obligations of the physician to students of medicine and the duties of pupil to teacher. In the oath, the physician pledges to prescribe only beneficial treatments according to his abilities and judgment, to refrain from causing harm or hurt, and live an exemplary personal and professional life. So let me go over here. There's actually a better version of it here. So the classic oath here, of course, all this will be linked in the description for you. The classic oath is the most widely known thing on medical ethics. You swear by numerous gods if you're doing this in the Greek mythology. Let's see. There are two versions of the Hippocratic Oath, the original one and the modern one. The need for revision was felt as drastic procedures like abortions and surgeries became commonplace and medically valid, questioning a physician's morals anew. Here is the classic. I swear by Apollo the physician, Asclepius the surgeon. I cannot pronounce all the Greek names. I apologize. Likewise, Hygeia and Panacea, and call all the gods and goddesses to witnesses that I will observe and keep this underwritten oath to the utmost of my power and judgment. I will reverence my master who taught me the art. Equally, my parents will I allow him equally with my parents will I allow him things necessary for his support, and will consider his sons as brothers. I will teach them my art without reward or agreement, and I will impart all my acquirement, instructions, and whatever I know to my master's children as to my own, and likewise to all my pupils, who shall bind and tie themselves by a professional oath, but to none else. With regard to healing the sick, I will devise and order for them the best diet, according to my judgment and means, and I will take care that they suffer no hurt or damage. Nor shall any man's entreaty prevail upon me to administer poison to anyone, neither will I counsel any man to do so. Moreover, I will give no sort of medicine to any pregnant woman with a view to destroy the child. Remember, this is the original. Further, I will comport myself and use my knowledge in a godly manner. I will not cut for the stone, but will commit that affair entirely to the surgeons. Surgery was considered a little bit differently, and I think there was at one. Well, I can't remember. Whatsoever house I may enter, my visit shall be for the convenience and advantage of the patient, and I will willingly refrain from doing any injury or wrong, from falsehood, and in an especial manner from acts of an amorous nature, whatever may be the rank of those who it may be my duty to care, whether mistress or servant, bond or free. Whatever in the course of my practice I may see or hear, even when not invited, whatever I may happen to obtain whatever I may happen to obtain knowledge of, if it be not proper to repeat it, I will keep sacred and secret within my own breast, which is to say, doctor-patient privilege right there. If I faithfully observe this oath, may I thrive and prosper in my fortune and profession, and live in the estimation of posterity, or on breach thereof, may the reverse be my fate. The Hippocratic Oath has been modified and revised several times. In 1960, the words "the utmost respect for life" from its beginning were added, making it more secular concept, not to be taken in the presence of the gods, but in front of other people. The oath was rewritten in 1964 by Louis Lasagna, academic dean of Tufts University School of Medicine, and this revised form is widely accepted in today's medical schools. We can get to that in a second. The modern or revised version of the Hippocratic Oath is this: I swear to fulfill, to the best of my ability and judgment, this covenant. I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose steps I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as is mine with those who are to follow. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures that are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I will remember that there is an art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. I will not be ashamed to say I don't know, nor will I fail to call in my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for a patient's recovery. I will respect the privacy of my patients, for their problems are not disclosed to me that the world may know. Most especially must I tread with care in matters of life and death. If it is given to me to save a life, all thanks. But it may also be within my power to take a life. This awesome responsibility must be faced with great humbleness and awareness of my own frailty. Above all, I must not play God. I will remember that I do not treat a fever chart, a cancerous growth, but a sick human being whose illness may affect the person's family and economic stability. My responsibility includes these related problems. If I am to care adequately for the sick, I will prevent disease wherever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. I will remember that I remain a member of society with special obligations to my fellow human beings, those sound of mind and body, as well as the infirm. If I do not violate this oath, may I enjoy life and art, respected while I live, and remembered with affection thereafter. May I always act so as to preserve the finest tradition of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek my help. So, the classic oath from the Greek involves, the relationship, the physician, the patient, and God. But the revised version is about physician and patient. And this, of course, as our society became more secular and respecting the distinction between religious views and things like that, that's where it came from. But nowhere in that does it ever say, nowhere in that, if you've got a proper Hippocratic oath, does it ever say that I will treat someone differently based upon the color of their skin or any of those other things. I will treat the patient as they need to be treated, or as the individual, for that matter. And that is where we come to some of... Whoop, that's not right.
For the first time in VPNS history, an oath has been written by the entering class to take at the white coats.
So, I'm sorry, I meant to say this. There's been a number of things put forward here, and I actually wanted to play a couple of these. I don't know that I'm going to play that one, but here's the one from this is University of Minnesota Medical School, courtesy of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression.
With gratitude, we, the students of the University of Minnesota Twin Cities Medical School class of 2026, stand here today among our friends, families, peers, mentors, and communities who have supported us in reaching this milestone. Our institution is located on Dakota land. Today, many Indigenous people throughout the state, including Dakota and Ojibwe, call the Twin Cities home. We also recognize this acknowledgement is not enough.
So, two things with that. The reason this came up on Fire's thing here is because not everybody agrees with land acknowledgements. And you just forced a whole class to recite that as part of their white quote ceremony with the oath.
We commit to uprooting the legacy and perpetuation of structural violence deeply embedded within the healthcare system. We recognize inequities built by past and present traumas rooted in white supremacy, colonialism, the gender binary, ableism, and all forms of oppression. As we enter this profession with opportunity for growth, we commit to promoting a culture of anti-racism, listening, and
Does that have anything in there about treating a patient? I haven't actually heard anything in that oath about treating a patient. Anyway.
Amplifying voices for positive change. We pledge to honor all Indigenous ways of healing that have been historically marginalized.
What if they didn't work? What if they don't actually cure a patient? What if they actually make a patient worse?
By Western medicine. Knowing that health is intimately connected to our environment, we commit to healing our planet and communities. We vow to embrace our role as community members and strive to embody cultural humility. We promise to continue restoring trust in the medical system.
I guarantee you stuff like this degrades trust in the medical system. Because nothing of what I heard in this thus far is about actually treating and caring for patients. Not a damn thing. That doesn't make me want to trust any of the graduates from this school.
And fulfilling our responsibilities as educators and advocates. We commit to collaborating with social, political, and additional systems.
Also, how many of the students actually disagree with this, but they're forced to say it anyway?
To advance health equity. We will learn from the scientific innovations made before us and pledge to advance and share this knowledge with peers and neighbors. We recognize the importance of being in community with.
So that thing about the science, that's the only thing from the actual Hippocratic Oath.
And advocating for those we serve.
I'm curious about this one. For the first time, incoming recited their own. Okay, here's one from Columbia University Irving Medical School. Recited their own classic. For the first time, the medical school's 254-year history, the incoming MD students recited their own class oath. Yeah. Updating the Hippocratic Oath to better reflect the values they wish to uphold.
Ceremony. The writing for this oath was facilitated by upper-class students and faculty, and the oath is found at your seat in your program. The class wrote the oath to reflect the values they wish to uphold as they enter their medical training, and I'm thinking of the words of our speaker today. They invite all physicians in attendance to join them in the recitation of the oath if they so choose. Class, please stand. In our profession, it is a custom established more than 2,000 years ago to articulate and commit to our guiding values, influenced by both the past and present, before accepting the privilege of caring for our fellow humans as students of medicine. Please join me. We enter the profession of medicine with appreciation for the opportunity to build on the scientific and humanistic achievements of the past. We also recognize the acts and systems of oppression affected in the name of medicine. We take this oath of service to begin building a future grounded in truth, restoration, and equity.
If you're automatically assuming that everything is about systems of oppression, then that second thing about the truth, service to building on the truth, you just straight up lied in your own oath.
To fulfill medicine's capacity to liberate. I make this pledge to myself, my class.
Wait. Medicine's capacity to liberate. Medicine's job, if you're in medicine, is the treatment of illness and injury. This is what Mr. Goldfarb was talking about in his concerns, and it's this kind of stuff that makes you not trust medicine.
Classmates and future colleagues, and the individuals and communities.
At least for myself, and for significant portions of other people, I should say.
I will serve. I acknowledge that my role is to inform my patients, accompanying them in moments of wellness and vulnerability, and respect their privacy and autonomy while empowering them to flourish. I promise to take care of my future patients by engaging in dialogue, listening to their lived experience, and tailoring my recommendations to their unique circumstances.
What if the person... So, This is where I go back to an analog that Jordan Peterson actually had that. What if, you're talking to a person who's anorexic and they're claiming they're fat? Do you listen to their lived experience then as a physician? Because if you do and you're saying they're fat, then you have to conclude that they're fat, and you may well inadvertently cause problems because you're treating them for the wrong thing because of their lived experience. Just saying.
I commit to honor the relationship formed between patient and physician by maintaining confidentiality at all times. I vow to contribute to the field of medicine through ethical study and equitable evidence-based care, and to treat my patients and
What the hell is equitable evidence based care?
represent my profession with compassion, humility, and equanimity. I acknowledge the past and present failures of medicine to abide by its obligation to do no harm, and affirm the need to address systemic issues in the institutions I uphold.
How does this do no harm?
I promise to critically examine the systems and experiences that impact every person's health and ability to receive care. I vow to use this knowledge to uplift my patients and disrupt the injustices that harm them as I forge the future of medicine.
What about their own autonomy? What about their own agency? What if they're making a poor choice themselves? That's not an injustice of somebody else. That's their own poor decisions. What are you going to do about that?
I acknowledge the background and experiences that enrich my perspectives while recognizing the limitations, shortcomings, and biases that I bring to each encounter with patients and
Standpoint theory.
colleagues. I promise to self-reflect diligently, to confront unconscious prejudices, and to develop the skills, knowledge.
Did they tell these students that I'd have to go look up the study, but apparently implicit bias tests have absolutely zero predictive power when it comes to behavior?
And character necessary to engender an inclusive, equitable field of medicine. I commit to fostering empathy and a culture of care, not just for our patients, but for ourselves and our colleagues in healthcare. I vow to remember the humanity and fallibility of myself and every member of the care team, and to call upon my colleagues for assistance and recognition of the limits of my knowledge and skills. I acknowledge and embrace the diversity that exists within all communities and the formative influence that the Washington Heights community will have on my future as a physician. I promise to respect, regardless of identity or socioeconomic status, the fundamental dignity of all patients, colleagues, and community
Why do you need that middle part?
members and the right to quality care. I vow to restore trust where it has been broken and to inspire and nurture trust in the relationships I build with patients through collaborative effort with my colleagues and communities. Let us bow our heads in recognition of the gravity of this oath. We swear to faithfully engage with these ideals and obligations for the ongoing betterment of medicine and humanity. It is now my honor to present the class of 2025. Please turn around to your families and friends.
I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't necessarily want to have any of those students as a doctor. At least for me, I wouldn't necessarily want that. It's not to say they may not all go on to be individual doctors, and that may not be just to say, maybe I just took this because I had to take this oath. But none of that was actually about treating a patient and recognizing that what ails a patient is not necessarily from some injustices, but also from a patient's potentially poor decisions, or it might have been a good decision and something just went wrong. Things like that happen, and that is exactly why it's a concern. And it's those kinds of things that make it pretty clear to me that you're doing these kinds of things. And of course this one's on Columbia's own This is on Columbia's own YouTube channel. I frankly, the more I see this, the less I trust doctors that take these oaths. I don't think you actually care about me as a patient as much as your activism. And that's why I have a lot of trust, except a lot of lack of trust in some of the things in medicine, with the exception of the doctors that I know who actually know their stuff. Which is to say, go find the doctors who know their stuff and didn't take an oath to be an activist, but actually took an oath to be a doctor. Anyway, that's it for right now. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that lovely good jazz. Until next time, I'm Adrian Mayhew. Stay curious, everybody.